The Los Angeles City Council has extended the city's eviction moratorium for another month in what landlords call a never-ending eviction moratorium. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have quite the interesting article for you today, and once again, it's going over eviction moratoriums, and specifically the city of Los Angeles, their eviction moratorium. So the city council in Los Angeles on August the 26th decided, hey, we need to extend this thing for another month. Now, I know people are probably a little bit confused by this because when they put all of these eviction moratoriums in place, they said, hey, this is tied to the fact that people were forced to stay home during the pandemic. They lost their source of employment because of all the ridiculous lockdown policies, and they didn't have the money to be able to pay their rent. But guess what? All those restrictions are over. They've been over for quite a while now. The CDC's eviction moratorium ended over a year ago. Even the state of California, the state's eviction moratorium has ended. Yet the city of LA just cannot let this thing die and has just kept it going on and on. And they decided to extend it based on this new report with new recommendations that were in this report that said, hey, we need to extend this eviction moratorium further. And the things that this report were recommending are absolutely ridiculous. And the only thing they're going to do is just make it harder to be a landlord. They're going to drive the cost of rental housing up, and it's going to be worse overall for affordable housing and for people who want to run their businesses. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, okay? Do you think the city of Los Angeles is ever going to end the eviction moratorium that they have going on right now? Or do you think this thing is just going to last forever, okay? I mean, I'm really curious because it seems like there is no way that these, progressive, far left-leaning politicians can just let this thing die. They're going to push for this socialized housing thing, even if it means that, landlords and their property rights are destroyed. Oh man, this is a frustrating thing because, it just seems like it's never going to end, okay? Anyway, let's get into the article. It's coming from therealdeal.com, and it says, LA's eviction moratorium continues for at least a month. City staff report recommends extending protections until the end of year, while landlord group says rule is dragging out the emergency. Let's get into it. Los Angeles City Council voted August 26th to extend for another month one of the longest-running pandemic moratoriums on evictions in California. Los Angeles eviction moratorium started in March 2020 and was intended to protect renters from becoming homeless during the economic disruption of the pandemic. Councilmember John Lee, who represents the city's 12th district, was the sole vote against continuing the declaration. At a previous council meeting, he said that the eviction moratorium unfairly penalized landlords months after other governmental bodies, including the state of California, let eviction moratoria expire. The original thing they said was, hey, if people get evicted during the pandemic, then that's going to spread the COVID-19. Well, that was a whole bunch of garbage. I knew it was garbage from the very beginning. I'm sure other landlords knew that as well. Okay? Then they were like, well, this is an economic issue, and we just can't allow people to be home. Like, wait a second here, So you're going to break the Constitution in order to house homeless people or people who are lower income? Basically, you're forcing us as private landlords to pay to house these people, and that isn't right either. Okay? So when it comes down to it, your justifications, even the justification you used is over, okay? You can't even use it as an excuse anymore. Only thing you're doing is pandering for votes. That's one of my theories, right? Or you're trying to push towards a system of socialism where people don't own houses anymore, but only the government owns housing. And that's honestly what I think is happening, especially in a place like California, okay? The LA City Council vote came a day after a city report recommended to extend the moratorium at least until the end of the year. A long anticipated report authored by the Los Angeles Housing Department was released on August 25th. The department, which runs the city's affordable housing programs and works on housing development, recommended that a moratorium on rental evictions remain in place until December 31st. The report also recommended that during the last 2 months of 2022, tenants unable to pay rent because of the economic impact of COVID will have eviction protections only if they provide landlords with a notice in a format prescribed by LAHD. Also, the report requests that the city attorney's office draft a law that would regulate evictions on all non-rent stabilized multifamily rental units, as well as rentals in corporate-owned single-family homes and condominiums. So yeah, this report by this Los Angeles Housing Department, right, which I'm assuming is the public housing department, it is putting out even more restrictions than they had in place before. So now they want to make sure that, hey, the eviction moratorium, it covers single family homes, it covers condos, it covers, small multifamily and people who weren't protected, before. They want to basically punish everyone who is a landlord, okay? And what is their logic behind it? I mean, that's my question, okay? When you say, hey, these people are still suffering because of the effects of the pandemic, well, listen, we're 2.5+ years beyond the beginning of this pandemic, okay? All of the restrictions from the pandemic for all the other businesses have been dropped. All the restrictions on people and, their freedom of movement, forcing people to wear masks, even the vaccine requirements and stuff have been dropped. Okay? And now we're at the point where you're just saying, well, the only people who still have to face any restrictions based on this pandemic are landlords. And then you realize that, hey, this has nothing to do with the pandemic, okay? It never did. The only thing they were trying to do was push to make it impossible for landlords to evict people, right? Push so that the government could take over the housing, and basically be paying people's rent for them. And then we move into this system of socialized housing. They think that is the solution to the, cost of living crisis. Well, it's not, okay? It doesn't work, and we've seen this in the multiple countries that have tried to have the government be the sole provider of housing. It just doesn't work, and it takes away people's freedom of movement. Okay, it takes away people's ability to choose where they want to live. Okay, and that's the whole problem with it. Oh my goodness. It's like people never learn the lessons that, are written down in history, because all this stuff has been written. All this stuff has happened in countries other than the US, and all we'd have to do is look up the information. We would see that, hey, rent control doesn't work. The government socialized housing doesn't work. We've seen it in this country that it doesn't work. And they still foolishly believe that, hey, maybe we can do it different, and this time it'll be different because we're in charge. No, it doesn't work. Other LAHD recommendations include a stipulation that tenants must repay pandemic rental debt by August of 2023. The report may be discussed in September by the Council's Housing Committee and Ad Hoc Committee on COVID-19 Recovery and Neighborhood Investment, according to a City Hall source. Requests for comment were not returned by LAHD representatives. So my question is, right, they say, tenants must repay that amount by August of 2023. And what happens if they don't? Okay, because I'm pretty sure in the case of tenants who haven't paid any rent since March of 2020, remember we're 2.5 years in right now. By August of 2023, we'll be 3+ years in, like almost 3.5 years in. Okay, do you think a tenant who hasn't paid rent in 3.5 years is suddenly going to be like, you know what? Here's the money. I was stockpiling. I was saving it just in case I had to pay. No, they're not going to pay it. Okay. Most likely, they're going to have to go through the eviction process at that point even. And, the landlord's going to have to spend thousands of dollars getting those people out of there, even if they are able to evict, and they're never going to recover a penny. This is the nightmare situation that these whole eviction moratoriums created. Okay. And even if the landlord did receive some rental assistance money, it likely did not cover the entirety of this eviction moratorium. Okay. I haven't heard of any of the rental assistance programs that are paying off 2.5 years of back rent. I've heard of them paying off up to 15 months, but nothing more than that. So yeah, this could end up just being a big money suck to all the landlords who got stuck in this situation. The report was met with outrage and skepticism by landlord groups such as the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. Daniel Yuckelson, executive director of the association, said that the pandemic restrictions on housing have run on while other pandemic rules such as mandatory masking have eased. Dragging out the emergency another 4 months and adding even more stringent and unnecessary tenant protections is another poke in the eye of the landlords. This makes no sense other than for continued pandering to tenant voters at the expense of housing providers. And now, owners renting their single-family homes or previously exempt rental properties will be subjected to the complicated and costly eviction regulations, he said. Yeah, they're trying to basically make this as painful for as many landlords as possible, okay? And this is an absolutely horrible thing. And you know what? I don't think in a month, when they said, hey, we're going to extend this thing for another month, I don't think it's going to end then. Even the recommendations by the LA Housing Department that said, hey, we're going to end this at the end of the year, I don't think it's going to end then either. I think this is such a hard issue for this city council to deal with that they are going to extend it as long as possible, perhaps indefinitely. So landlords in Los Angeles better get used to the fact that they can't evict anyone for any reason and that the government has almost 100% control of your properties.